Good morning, everybody.
And one of these mornings,
turn the noise and the music off, and welcome to what I think is going to be, I hope is going to be one of the, if not the best Saturday morning of your life. I'm going to do my best to make that happen. I think we all will come together in that endeavor. Let me just figure out where to start here. We'll give a couple minutes for people to start joining. And for people who are on Substack, I apologize yesterday. I don't know what happened. The last 20 minutes or so was completely cut off for some reason. I guess Substack had a glitch, so we're gonna monitor it today. And I just got a notice on Substack. Your internet connection is unstable. How is that? I'm not sure how that's the case. It's direct. Anyways, whatever. Let's hope it works out. And again, apologize to everybody on Substack from yesterday, but we'll get these kinks sorted out in the next little bit, and have hopefully a slightly more polished version of us coming together and talking about some stuff. And you know what else I forgot to do? I forgot to post this into the Discord. So I'm going to do that now. So everybody who's in Discord, you're going to get an alert right now. Everyone else who is not in Discord, we're doing some retooling on it. So we will polish it off over the next little while, and we'll get it opened up to a number of you. We have a number of categories here that are a little bit redundant in the Discord, and we want to streamline it a little bit, make it a little bit more clear, and all that sort of stuff. So, I hope you all have your cup of coffee in memory of our friend Scott Adams. And I've been trying this experiment of changing the coffee and creamer for protein powder, for vanilla protein powder. And takes a lot of getting used to. It's not... It's kind of awful. So anyways, that is what it is. So please like, share, and subscribe. And you'll notice once again, for those of you who were not here yesterday, no, I am not in Colombia. I was supposed to be speaking today. But we not only had the snowstorm last night, but there was a snowstorm that hit right when my flight was supposed to take off. And we were on the tarmac for 2.5 hours approximately when the captain got on the PA system and said, we need to return to the gate because we're going to be short of the fuel requirement when we land in Bogota. And who knows how long that was going to be. So basically that trip was canceled. So hopefully none of you ran out and bought your tickets for for South America. But I'm assuming I'll be likely speaking there next year, this time as well. And I will let you know. Good morning, Megan. Megan's amazing because Megan is all over my feeds, always sharing my stuff. And I really appreciate that, Megan. That's very sweet of you. Anyways, so we're going to open up the Discord. We'll talk about that a little bit in some future episodes. Also, for those of you who had an interest in Scott Adams, I know there's a number of people who joined this stream who had been listening to him. Apparently, the Scott Adams podcast, the entire library, I guess, has been uploaded to Audible, which is absolutely amazing. What's interesting about when he talked about things, because he would pair it to reframing of certain situations, even though some of the topics are somewhat stale dated, it doesn't make the whole experience stale dated. It's not like watching Saturday Night Live when that was a program. 20 years in the future, you just don't understand what's going on because it's so political in nature. Because he ties it to reframing exercises and uses that as a way to kind of highlight and explain the process of analysis and cause and effect and all that sort of stuff. It's more evergreen than most daily podcasts are. So it's great. So just to let everybody know. I don't know. For those of you who saw yesterday, looking for feedback, what do you think about the my explanation of the emerging far left MAGA, the very dangerous post woke left that is on the horizon? For those of you who do know, I'm assuming you understand why it is so concerning and should be so concerning for all of us. There's a bunch of things that are concerning right now, but that's one of this. I think we need to we'll watch the people around you and as they pivot, and we'll talk a little bit about that more later on. And yeah, don't worry, we're going to get into the topic at hand, which is the Supreme Court decision in Canada. We'll get to that in a couple. But first, I want to start with a Scott Adams tradition, which I brought up a few days ago. So good. This is in a publication that he loved to mock frequently called SciPost. And this was written by Karina Petrova. And it's a new study that finds that university students playing video games for over 10 hours weekly have poorer diets and higher body mass reported than their peers, suggesting excessive screen time displaces healthy habits. Really? Really? That's shocking. So sitting in front of the console or computer playing video games for hours and hours, and having an increased sedentary lifestyle creates weight gain. Wow. Shocked. You know who knew that? Not just Scott Adams. Everyone on earth, like every person on earth knows if you have a more sedentary lifestyle, whether it's caused by video games or not, that is going to result in weight gain. And what's interesting about it is, I don't know if he mentioned this, but this whole cause and effect exercise, that actually comes from hypnosis. It's one of the things you learn when you do your training is the cause and effect model, especially for those who get into to therapy. I think that's why Scott highlighted these things, these super obvious articles so regularly, because it is a fundamental principle of what they do when they do analyses and hypnotherapy and all that sort of stuff. By the way, I hope it's working on X. Yesterday, just as I was starting, X/Twitter had, I don't know, a DDoS attack or something, and it was down. So we didn't have I didn't have anything broadcasting there. I was thinking about rebroadcasting, but whatever, Oh yeah, and the other things for those of you who have asked, because I've been asked repeatedly for a very long time. I'm going to try to see if I can manage in my life right now, a regular schedule of Friday, Saturday, Sunday to do streams, and then through the week, post all the excerpts from the streams, the Monday to Thursday. We'll try that out as the next schedule, see how it works. And then things may change even further towards the end of March. We'll see what happens. But that's the trajectory right now. I can't guarantee it, but I'm going to try. And it just goes to show, the amount of dedication somebody like Scott, who is on here every day, 365 days a year, how disruptive that is to, not disruptive, but what a commitment that is. You think like, oh, it's just an hour. No, it takes a while to set this all up. For me too. And to be able to be there every day for what he did, 3,000 podcasts, so probably 3,000 and change, 366, I think. That is significant. So I'm going to do my best to try to fit within all of my projects right now, to do it within that window, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm sure those of you will be happy who've been asking me, and we'll see how it goes. So again, no guarantees, but I'm going to try my best, and that's what we're going to aim for. Something else that was interesting is our friend Sam Harris. So those of you who don't know, I produce a podcast called Open College with Professor Stephen Hicks, and episode 62, which was out recently in the end of 2024, is titled Why Sam Harris Matters. And I know there's a lot of people who have a lot of problems with his takes, and myself included on certain things. But it was very interesting. There was an interview. It's online. A bunch of people have posted this excerpt from this interview where he struggles, like painfully, painfully struggles to compliment Trump on Iran and what he's been doing with Iran. It's really funny to watch because you can see how annoyed he is, having to admit that he has been the strongest on Iran. Doesn't mean he's perfect, but he's been the strongest on Iran compared to any previous presidents. And he even says there's no way that Kamala Harris would have had such a dramatic effect on Iran. So it's really interesting to watch. You should watch it. But it's interesting. Sam Harris. He really dislikes Trump, obviously. There's no question. But I think it's because he doesn't understand the show. I'm assuming he disliked or dislikes WWF or WWE wrestling or the TV show The Apprentice. That's what you're watching with Trump. It's a show. It's a shtick, right? It's a marketing and branding method of running for president and running the government now. That's why the people in his cabinet he wants to elevate. They're another personality, right? Like Pete Hegseth, he's like the warrior media guy. Marco Rubio, he's the very, I should explain this, very interesting. He's your very typical, well-educated, articulate, middle class, upper middle class, Latino, or in America they call him Hispanic, which makes me crazy because they're not from Spain. Anyways, and Marco Rubio, Marco Rubio is he's similar to, he reminds me of my friends in South America, my friends who are in IT, in banking, in insurance, working professionals. We do a disservice in the United States when they kind of brand Hispanics as migrant workers. Latin America is the complete opposite of that. And most of Latin America people are very, very much like Marco Rubio. So, so there you go. You have another personality on the WWE/Apprentice Trump administration roster. Everybody's is a personality who has some unique skills and very, very strong skills. So anyway, so back to Sam Harris. So Sam Harris knows what TDS is. And, I've seen him push back and say, yeah, everybody wants to say I just have TDS, but it's not that. So he's not crazy. He understands what people see in Trump. He trivializes it. I think he has a degree of TDS because that's the whole thing when when you're suffering cognitive dissonance, you don't know that you're suffering cognitive dissonance. One of the things you learn in hypnosis, Scott Adams talked about frequently. But so I don't think he understands that he actually is the victim of it. But regardless, he's a perfect example of why you should listen to people on the other side. Doesn't mean you should agree with them, but just understand their arguments and understand which of their arguments are horrible. And sometimes they have a good argument that you disagree with. Those are the ones you want to look for. That's the sweet spot, finding the argument that okay, I disagree with you, but I understand how you come to that conclusion. That's when you understand that, then you can reach people on the other side. I touched a little bit about that yesterday. So that's, so yeah, check that out. Now, I saw Sam Harris did some other thing today where he went crazy on, I don't know, something else. Is just when I'm starting up, I'll look at it later. Every time you want to give somebody compliments, like, hey, they've had a moment of enlightenment, and then boom, something else, they just shoot themselves in the foot. It's like, oh God, come on, we thought you were there. You're getting there, right? But anyways, no, Sam Harris is not crazy, and I do encourage you to listen to Open College episode 60, I think 62. It's on Spotify. Why Sam Harris matters. Doesn't mean you'll agree. I think you'll agree with the conclusion that Stephen Hicks comes to, but doesn't mean you necessarily agree with Scott Adams' takes on issues, right? Sorry, I'm not Scott Adams. I'm Sam Harris. It's early morning, and I'm still trying to make it through this. Well, not early morning, but it's morning. I'm still trying to make it through this coffee with vanilla protein, and yeah, so I don't have sufficient caffeine today. So, anyways, Trump on Greenland, and this is very interesting, but it's really, I don't know. I don't see Trump as the scary part because, again, it's the Apprentice WWF show. It's, again, you mentioned yesterday, if you read The Art of the Deal, then you understand his tactic of, and Scott Adams went through this in detail, the tactic in which he uses to persuade people and set up negotiations and build a frame where he's in a dominant position. That's all you're watching. Our politicians in Canada, I don't know what's wrong with them. I don't know if they've all had a lobotomy, but they just don't seem to be able to think. At least our governing party right now, it's just crazy. So once again, Trump has doubled down on the threats to invade Greenland. And, there's people in the intel world that want to trivialize it and say, yeah, he's not really, he's trying to push the needle. He's not really trying to get Greenland. And I'm thinking, no, he's trying to get Greenland. He's absolutely going to get Greenland. I think he will. And not he, the United States will. But if you're Canada, right, if you're the leader of Canada and you see this, warm situation in your region, what's the best way to de-escalate the situation if you're Canada, right? Well, I'll give you a hint. It's not what Mark Carney's doing. Mark Carney, by the way, who I'm increasingly beginning to think is mentally unstable. Maybe that's why his kid doesn't know what gender he or she is. I don't know, maybe the whole family's a little bit nuts, more than we realize. But yeah, I'm starting to think he's a maniac who's mentally ill. During the Freedom Convoy, Mark Carney wrote, when he was not even in government, although apparently he was calling a lot of the shots and advising behind the scenes, because as we know, Trudeau was just a puppet. But during the Freedom Convoy, Mark Carney wrote in an article in the National Post, if I remember correctly, and he called the most peaceful protest in Canadian history seditious. So he's nuts. He's just nuts. He's mentally unstable. And maybe he could be a good villain in an X-Men movie. He's increasingly looking like that. He might actually be a maniac. But anyways, what do you think Mark Carney did? Well, did he de-escalate and say, we should all come together? Hey, maybe Canada can be a place for the Americans and Denmark and the Danes come together. Let's talk. Let's see if we can help with a role in this. Or did he do any of that? No. Much like the blackface regime, stupidity during the convoy, he's escalating at every opportunity. It's crazy. The whole point of diplomacy, like law enforcement, is de-escalation. You're trying to de-escalate situations. But this maniac, like Trudeau, escalates at every opportunity. It's crazy. So now Mark Carney is threatening to join China in going to war with the United States. What, are you stupid? Is he mentally insane? What, are you crazy? What's the matter with these people? You're going to go with China, you're going to go to war with the U.S.? It's, and a reminder, Canada once bought, 10 years ago, I think it was? Canada bought a used diesel submarine from England, and it had a hole in it. Yes, we have very dedicated people in our military, but it has been so grossly underfunded for decades that despite the fact you have good, strong military personnel, we just don't have the infrastructure. We can't even protect our borders properly because the borders are so vast, right? And what I'm concerned about is, imagine this in the future, in the very near future, that maniac Carney decides, okay, we're going to go to war with the United States, so we're going to cancel NORAD. If you understand, if you know what NORAD is, it's an acronym. It's the I can't remember what it is. But basically, it's a military agreement with the Canadian and U.S. government that they both oversee the airspace of Canada and the US, and I believe it's in Cheyenne Mountain, if I'm not mistaken. That's where their headquarters are. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was it. That is it. But anyways, imagine Carney decides we're going to cancel NORAD with the United States because we're going to go to war with them. Like, what kind of clown world is this? And then we're going to give administration of Canadian airspace, we're going to do it with China. If you do that, the Americans will invade. They will. And guess what? They should. If you partner with China and get rid of the United States and replace NORAD with a Chinese Canadian administration of our airspace, the Americans should invade, and they will. That's right. So Canada, because of these idiots, is on the verge, potentially, of being a battleground for a kinetic war like Ukraine. That's how stupid we are. I mean, maybe we deserve it. Maybe we deserve it of the decades of elevating these postmodern extremists, these ultra-leftist morons who cannot think. The lack of the ability of critical thinking. That's why they escalate everything. They escalate everything because they can't get out of their own heads. They lack the ability of critical thinking. It's just crazy. I don't care, you put a guy in a suit, runs a property management company. Who knows how much corruption was in there? As we know, it was quite corrupt, as some scandals have been emerging, right? So they're just thieves. So you have these empty thieves who really are increasingly starting to look like they're mentally ill or psychopaths, are taking us down this path where Canada can become a battleground for a kinetic war. What the hell is going on? Now, look, I doubt this will happen, but the fact that it even could, that we're even getting this close, shows the severity of our situation. And this is what happens when you elect morons, when the entire establishment is so corrupt, and the whole process of nominations makes it closed, that it's just the cult of the political personalities and the lobbyists. There's the only ones that are allowed into office, and keep out all the business people, all the people with private sector, free market experience. No, just make it the cult of idiots that have just gravitated to politics because they're ambitious and lazy simultaneously, and they're going to use politics to make themselves famous, because that is a large, it's not everybody, but it's a lot of people in our political establishment. It's crazy we're getting to that point. I mean, God forbid, if any sort of indication is put out there that Canada is going to suspend NORAD and work with the Chinese, it's time to leave. It's time to leave, or get ready for something very kinetic within Canada. Like, this is very serious. I'm very concerned about it. So, and you can see online, there's a lot of pushback from people, and not just people who are conservative, but people who are just not politically aligned. Thank God we have a Chinese community in Canada, an Asian community, who understands the threats of the CCP. I mean, look, it's not even it is a hybrid of communism and fascism. That's how bad it is. It's the worst of both worlds right now. So why China is not safe for business. You have these, for people who understand, the poli-sci experts will explain to you the means of production in the communist model versus the fascist model, where it's private sector, but the private sector is dictated by the government. Well, they're doing both in China. It's how crazy it is. And you want to partner with them? It's so obviously un-Canadian, but it's really difficult not to behave and not use naughty words. Let me just put it that way. So anyways, I hope all of you will just speak up and push back as much as possible and show that this is the degree of extremities that are occurring in Canada right now. And we all need to push. I don't care if you're left or right, center, hopefully center left, center right, and you all understand it. We got to come together and push back against this nonsense, put an end to it, because it will cost us the country. Because the Americans will invade, and we will be absorbed by the United States. You won't have a choice. That's what's going to happen. Right now, we're at least in a situation where if these dumbasses just talked with and tried to negotiate with the Trump administration, they could come to an amicable deal. The perfect deal would be to not have a border, right? What do you have the border for if we can share one economy? Like, it would be great. It would be the best thing in the world for Canada. Yeah, there's trade-offs. I get that. But still have a separate country, separate legal system, separate governance of the provinces and whatnot. But open up the border and have just free and open trade amongst the two places with the greatest natural resources on the planet. Like, why would you turn that down? It's so crazy. You keep the Canadian identity. It's still Canada. But anyways, we're going to talk more about that in the future, I think, because I think this is not going away anytime soon. So I'm going to get into the good news for today. So today is a lot of fun. Last night, you will have seen the notice coming up, and I just released an article on Substack, and I think it's in the Daily Bell, the National Telegraph, and it's going through, it's working through the network sort of thing of different publications that carry my written articles. But the Supreme Court ruled that the Emergency Measures Act invoked by the blackface Trudeau regime to quash the trucker convoy was illegal and unreasonable. That's according to the Supreme Court appeal. And by the way, this is a humiliating loss. I'll read this explanation. I like this short excerpt. The Federal Court of Appeal ruled that Trudeau's 2022 invocation of the Emergencies Act was flat out unreasonable, but this blockbuster decision can still be appealed to the Supreme Court of Canada. I'm not that this is the appeal, so I don't know who wrote this. But this was the first ever use of the nuclear power Supreme Court Emergency Measures Act provision. And what's interesting about it is the reason this is the first time the EMA was used is because it replaced the War Measures Act, which was abused by Trudeau's father. Isn't that interesting? Idiot father like idiot son, right? Like, just crazy. But anyways, so what's interesting is the Supreme Court has come to the conclusion what we've all been telling you, what we all have, all of us who were involved, all of us who were there, and all of us who were on the ground and saw what was happening. We knew what it was. And by the way, so did everybody in law enforcement. And I know because I have family in law enforcement. Everybody understood that these maniacs in office completely overstepped their ground, right? That, some of the things that are often missed in the legacy media, intentionally, because legacy media is just a smear machine for governments at this point. They've always failed to mention how that the protest was peaceful. There was zero violence from anybody involved in the trucker convoy, that they had set up barbecues, had been feeding the homeless, that crime went down during that period. And that the fact that where the trucks were parked were exactly where the Ottawa police told us to park when we came into the city, right? I wasn't there at the time already, but they were dealing with Chris. Chris got a map from the Ottawa police, which mapped out where the trucks should be to minimize disruption to traffic, and that's why we had these emergency lanes and whatever. But the media wants to just lie to you. They just want to brainwash and lie to you, and they do it through repetition. Over and over and over again, just repeat the assertion, it doesn't matter, like they're Goebbels themselves, right? Anyways, and remember, was it Marco Mendicino, that little Italian communist troll, right? No, not him. I'm talking about the Attorney General, that little troll, whatever his name was, the guy who looked like he could be in a Dilbert cartoon, actually, the guy with the glasses, Lamari or something like that. Anyways, that idiot and the rest of them were trying to plan how many tanks can we send in tanks. Stupid idiots, all of them morons, educated by movies. And then there's your perfect, it's the perfect explanation, or the perfect way to highlight that just because somebody is Western educated in university does not mean they have any sense of intelligence whatsoever. Just because you can regurgitate what's been fed to you is not a sign of intelligence. And you see it when these idiots came together trying to brainstorm, can we just send in a tank? So stupid. Anyways, but it's a good example of how these people in government who you have elected, that we have elected, are the most unhinged, loose cannons the country has ever seen. You're seeing the equivalent of homeless people on the street who are addicted to methamphetamines, who scream at passersby. That's who's in your government. That's how lost these people are. It's crazy. And it's really frustrating for the people who are in government, who are smart, who understand this, who are always trying to hide behind the scenes, trying to hit, they're trying to move things along and prevent everything from going from total collapse. And they have to navigate around these maniacs. So I feel a lot of sympathy for those people who are in politics and in elected office, who have to navigate all this stuff, right? But I might even have some sympathy for Carney himself, and maybe that's why he's becoming a maniac, or maybe he's just a dick. I think that's just what he is, right? But it's crazy. It's a clown car of people that run your government and your country. So according to the CCF, which is the Canadian Constitution, what's the Canadian something of Federation, Constitutional Federation, they're the ones who brought this lawsuit. The decision was unanimous and a total repudiation of the government's actions during the trucker convoy. I'm going to repeat that. It was unanimous and a total repudiation of the government's actions. So everything they did was completely and totally in violation of law. What happens to you when you break the law? You get prosecuted, you go to jail. What's happening to these people? What's going to happen to the people in Canada, the Krista Freeland, and, with her retroactive legislation, which was also totally illegal? And Trudeau, are we a country of laws or not? Or are we just clown show? Because if we're just a clown show, we're aligning with China. Yeah, you know what? Bring in the Americans, because we are not responsible enough at this point to administer our country. That's how lost it's become. But anyways, what they've determined was they upheld the lower court decision, which you remember when Justice Mosley had communicated the same thing in his decision. And what they've said, you can go read the decision. It's interesting I've heard excerpts of it. It's quite interesting, but they did not meet the threshold for requirement for the invocation of the Emergency Measures Act. And for those of you who are American, the Emergency Measures Act is basically Canada's equivalent of martial law. That's right. They brought in martial law for some parked trucks because they were afraid those parked trucks would become the political opposition, which we had become very quickly. So the threshold is not met. The right to free expression was restricted severely. And this was interesting, the right to unreasonable search was violated. And that means forcing banks to share information without a warrant. And those of you who remember, I had written a letter to the president of my banks, the CEOs of my banks, asking why my accounts were frozen during that period. And I got a letter back, and thank you to the Daily Wire and to Zero Hedge for amplifying that article written by Mark Petroni, wrote the article, and explaining that when Krista Freeland tried to, worm her way out of what she had done during one of the subcommittee hearings by suggesting that the banks voluntarily on their own froze our bank accounts, that I had the letter from one of my banks that inferred that no, in fact, it was the government that forced them. And they're just such garbage. They're such garbage. God, why do we have this trash in our country? Why are they running our government? What the hell is going on? Anyways, I released an article, as I said before, on Substack, National Telegraph, Daily Wire, not Daily Wire, Daily Bell, a few others coming through. They'll come through in the next day or so. And what I did is I tried to correct the smears and assertions from the fake news. And it's really deceptive what they do. There was an article, one of the articles I was reading, like every other word was a smear or some form of defamation that was inaccurate. Some people say it was violent. Some people, no, nobody said that. Nobody said that. You know who said that? The employees of the Liberal Party who lived in downtown Ottawa. That's who said it, right? Because they're on Team Liberal, because that's their employer. It's amazing how naive and stupid we can be sometimes, not understanding motivations of people, that people have often hidden agendas, right, that are self-serving. But anyways, the reason I did this article is because I saw a number of articles coming out that were repeating all the fake smears that have been disproven. And I like to think that mine is as accurate as possible, that it was peaceful, there were no violations, nobody was, there was no violence, nobody was hurt or injured. It was a party, everybody celebrated. That's why you had the bouncy castles and the barbecues and the dance parties and the entire city. It's so funny, all these leftists, it's so frustrating that, you know, they'd always celebrate things like, I don't know, Woodstock. Well, you had Woodstock. You had Woodstock in downtown Ottawa, and you killed it. So you are the very evil that you think you are fighting against. That's the people on the extreme left. And what's more disappointing is the people who are kind of in the center who fall for this nonsense and don't sit back and think, wait, is what I'm reading accurate? Because it's not. And that's why I and others do what we do. But this is, once again, this is the danger of these incompetent, uneducated fools running your country. And by uneducated, I don't mean they can't go to a university and say, I don't know what a woman is, and then get a degree, a BA that says that. That's not education. General understanding. You know, it's a good sign of education for me. If you can go to South America, to a very dangerous country, and not get killed or kidnapped in the first week, yeah, because you understand how to read the rules and how to figure people out and how to navigate, that's education. That's somebody who's educated and smart, understands how the world works, in my opinion, right? But anyways, but now I'm going to speak to the political class, the lobbyists, the strategic management companies, and the big donors of the parties who really run our political establishment. I know you want empty suits in office because it's advantageous for lobbying and for business. I get it. And I get you want to dictate things that will keep the economy together. But you've gone too far. These empty suits that you are putting in office, they are maniacs. And they are going to destroy the country, and they will destroy your lives as well. So if you are a lobbyist for, I don't know, one of Canada's monopolies that have caused some of this chaos just so that monopoly can maintain its hold, guess what's going to happen when the Americans come in? Your business is done. It's over. It's finished. They will crush you, as they should, because that's what the free market is about, because that's what freedom is about. You have to be able to compete fairly, which none of these people want to do. Sorry, I don't mean to rant so much today. It's just so annoying. There's so many of these problems that can just be avoided. They're, problems created by man that could be solved by man if man had a functioning brain cell. But the moral of the story is, as it should have been, they have ruled that the invocation of Canada's equivalent to martial law, freezing our bank accounts, arresting people on spurious charges, targeting people in the country, all of that was completely illegal and in violation of Canadian law. So what happens to them? What's our remedy? Why are they not being charged? right? In the United States, you saw the lengths that they went to impeach Donald Trump over nothing, over a fake, dossier and rumors and whatever. Why is there nothing like that in Canada? Hey, conservatives, what's your play? Are you going to prosecute them? Because I'm willing to bet that would be pretty popular amongst most of Canada if you actually turned up your rhetoric a little bit and spoke straight, like just directly to the people and echoed our frustration. Stop with the focus grouped answers and stuff like that's why you're not winning elections. They just people. I said this to Andrew Scheer privately. I said when he was first elected leader, I said to him, what people want is authenticity and strength. And he had this look on his face like that never even occurred to him. That's what people want. We're tired of the bullshit. Just give it to us directly and show that you know how to fight, right? And that means fighting with the media, which, by the way, if you notice, that has been the approach that the Trump administration has taken. Stephen Miller, in my opinion, I think he's one of the best communicators within the Trump administration. You should watch him. He really understands how to push back at media effectively, meaning the people watching get on side with him very quickly because he's pragmatic in how he communicates things. And that's what we need. That is going to be the communication framework that will save this country in the next election. But I don't know when that's going to be. What's going to be less than a year from now? Something like that. If you're bringing China in, are we done? How much? I mean, we already know our nominations are rigged. So we don't rig our general election like what was done in the United States. We rig the nominations. So they rig the nominations so they get the candidate that they want. So then, you're choosing between one drone and another drone. That's how they rig it here. I don't know. It looks, we could have a very bright future or a very bleak future. I think the bright future, the solution is get rid of that border, open up the economy, and work with the Americans as closely as possible to administer this one massive economic zone and become economic partners with the largest economy the world has ever seen in human history. Like, why would you turn that away? How dumb are you to turn that down? Anyways. So we'll talk a little bit more on future streams about the decision because it is going to have ramifications. The good news is that there are still people who can think within our judiciary, which is something we talk about on one of the podcasts I produce, Not on Record, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. That's the legal podcast. We touch a lot on false accusations. And one of the things that Joseph often talks about is the state of Canada's legal system is not as bad as people perceive it to be. And perhaps this is just another indicator of that. So maybe that's a sign of hope, right? Maybe that's something we should be happy for. So again, we'll get more into this in another stream. Just right now, we're all still digesting what happened, and there's more research to be done. The Iran protests have gone on for 21 days now. I think it's 21, 22, 20, something like that. And I see a lot of people are getting very, very frustrated with the Trump administration because he thanked the Ayatollahs for not executing 800 protesters. Listen, this is for the people who get upset at that. The tactic is called pacing and leading. It's a very common sales tactic. Why make them angry? You gotta pat them on the head when they do something good, right? It's doesn't mean you like the regime. So we'll see what happens. I think there's going to be surprises in the next few days. It's going to be kind of like that, the usual suspects. He's Kaiser Soze. I think there's going to be one of those that will happen, right? But thankfully, those 800 people, hopefully, it's true that they were spared. But there are other people, many who have been killed by the Iranian regime. Trump said he would intervene if protesters were killed. So he's clearly trying to navigate, it's the push-pull. Oh, they're going to not execute 800. Great. He just saved 800 people, but a bunch of other people have been killed. So what do you do? Well, this is why the world is not black and white. The world is all gray, and there's complex answers for complex problems. And sometimes it takes time and strategic thinking to get through some of these things. So let's hope that things materialize to the positive in the Iranian issue. We all know, everybody knows. This was interesting. I mentioned this yesterday. If you go on to Blue Sky, where all the lefties are, even they know the Iranian regime is horrible. So here's an issue where you can bring the vast majority of people on the left, maybe the liberal side of the left, and people on the right. You actually can find some common ground on this issue if somebody can communicate to them and have them understand, yeah, we disagree on a lot, but we understand, we both agree on this issue, so let's figure out how this can be rectified. And that's not addressing the paid operatives and political shills for the extremist left that's mainly foreign funded. That you can just write off, because those are people who are incentivized exclusively by, there's going to be some ideology because they're brainwashed, but it's the reward incentive, the monetary incentive that keeps them going. You get paid 80 grand a year to hold up a sign and say, I hate Trump. Lots of people are going to take that, right? Yesterday, I discussed a little bit of, this is the last point I want to get to, but for those of you who missed it, I discussed, and we'll get into more detail because this also is going to be an ongoing issue, the far left mega copycats. I think that might be the best way to frame it. That so for those who weren't here, I explained that the woke left is over. It's done. There's many of us who have been observing this over time, and it's going to be replaced, with far left populism, which is very, very dangerous. That is going to be Stalinism with a Southern accent or a rural accent, driving a pickup, trying to pretend to be America, but it's communism. Like that is, and people will fall for it. We're going to talk more about that going on and dissect it over time, but in people may not understand the connection, but this is why we need to talk more in depth about the Palestinian hoaxes. Very, very important. And some of the hoaxes we've discussed on previous live streams, and we'll do some review of this in the near future. The genocide hoax, the Gaza genocide hoax, the stolen land hoax, the settler hoax, you hear that all the time. And there also is, as Scott coined it with the Fine People hoax, there is a tentpole hoax around Israel as well. But the reason all of this is important to understand it is because that is the glue that will hold the far left MAGA copycats together. That's what's going to bring them together, is the hatred or obsession with Israel that a country they don't even understand. But it doesn't matter, because that is the emotional glue that will bring them together. And if people understand their glue is built on a pyramid of hoaxes, then there's less chance that it's going to be successful. But this is why Tucker Carlson, as the Babylon Bee described him, a leader in the Muslim Brotherhood, this is why he keeps saying Israel genocide, Israel genocide, Israel genocide, Israel genocide. He's trying to create what's called a painted word. Which comes from the word pain, not painted, not painting. But a painted word is a word that once it becomes a painted word, a word that causes pain, when a subject hears it, it goes straight to the amygdala and they go crazy and they lose their minds. The example on the left that everybody knows is the word Trump. That's why they kept saying Trump, Hitler, Trump, Hitler, Trump, Hitler, Trump, Hitler, Trump racist, Trump racist, Trump racist, Trump racist. Because if you hear it enough times from people who you think are credible, you're going to absorb that framing of the world. Well, Tucker Carlson is trying to do that to Jews and to Israel. Israel genocide, Israel genocide, Israel genocide, Israel genocide. And if you get enough of the populist people, the libertarian type people, who get this painted word implanted in their subconscious and their amygdala, then you can just say the word Israel, everybody goes nuts, and you can bring them all together. That's why they're doing what they're doing. It is way more strategic than most people give them credit for it, and it's very dangerous. So to shut things down, and because I got to get going in a couple of minutes, but I do like to end on something positive, right? Some good things that have happened. And while we discussed one at length, even though I kind of ranted about it, but let me say, you got to give me a pass. Come on. I got a reason to rant about some of this stuff. Many, many reasons. But so the positive that we can take away from all of this is that, yes, the Canada's Supreme Court eviscerated the Trudeau-Carney government for their actions. Now, what's going to be the remedy and punishment and penalty for this? I don't know. I think you got to start asking the Conservatives, what are you going to do now that they broke the law? What are you going to do if you get into office? You going to punish them? Are you going to have them brought up in front of a committee? You're going to have them investigated? You're going to have them prosecuted? Or are you just going to pretend like, oh, it's okay, let's just move on? No, that is not sufficient anymore. I'm sorry. No. They need to be prosecuted harshly with the fullest extent of the law. Harshly is what needs to happen, right? But the fact that they got eviscerated, hey, it's a start, right? So the Trudeau-Carney government, I mean, would it be fair to say they have zero credibility at this point? They got eviscerated by the Supreme Court. They're doing this alignment with China. Carney's now threatening war. Like, what are you, idiots? So I think so much is falling apart for them that I think that's a good start, that we might have hit peak stupidity in Canada, and we may have greener pastures on the horizon. And just look around in general. Look, we're midway through winter. Spring is around the corner. I don't know. I think I've long said, as long as I've been doing this stream, that I see the future as being amazing and bright with all the advances in technology that we have. So many things that are changing our lives, freeing up our time, which is something we'll talk about in systemization at another time. People think that, and what are you talking about? I'll explain that another time. But there's so many good things going on in the world, in the area of science and technology and space, and not just Elon Musk, but in terms of probes that are going around to different places around the universe, things that we're learning, the James Webb Space Telescope. Like, there's so much going on in the world that is so amazing. The skill is just to focus on that and to focus on the gratitude that we should all have for all the good things. And, these bumps in the road that we're dealing with right now, a Carney and all this stupidity, let's hope they're just going to be bumps in the road that don't blow up in our face, but we figure out a way to overcome them and head to this new golden age that I think we're on the horizon. It's just going to take time, right? And, you see this. One day there's really good things that happen. One day there's bad things that happen, whatever. But I don't know. Overall, I think things are going to be amazing. So just focus on gratitude. And a good way to do that, as Scott Adams always said, just be useful. Try to be useful and contribute. And try to be good to other people, which I've always advocated on here. Be kind to a stranger today, somebody at the gas station or the attendant at Costco. Talk to them, say hello, be personable with them. It's going to make you feel a lot better about yourself, but you're going to change their day more than you realize, especially people who are in positions where their work kind of drones on for hours and hours. You'd be amazed how much you can change somebody's day if you actually engage and you talk to them. I highly encourage that. Anyways, I'm going to shut it all down now. I hope you're all amazing. I hope you all have an amazing day. I love you all. We can celebrate this. My article's on bjdictor.substack.com about the emergency, the EMA, the martial law of Canada regulation being violated by Trudeau. You'll find it all over the place. But National Telegraph, Daily Bell, my Substack, and we'll see where else it gets covered today. We'll talk more about this moving on, and if all goes well, I'll be doing another stream tomorrow, and let's try this schedule. I'll do my best to show up for all of you, and if you can, come join me, and maybe we'll figure out a way to build a more prosperous, calm, enlightened movement where we can bring people in from the other side who are still confused about what's been going on in the world. I know I've been doing a lot of communications, having a lot of communications and interactions with people who were longtime liberals who finally have hit their threshold, and they're done. They've started to get curious. It's going to be interesting to see how they respond to this ruling by the Supreme Court. I think it's going to help enlighten people further as well, and that's something to be optimistic and positive about. All right, I got to run, and I love you all. Please like, share, subscribe. Don't forget, you can get a copy of this, honkingforfreedom.com. If there's ever a day that this was relevant, this would be it. And this is the book you buy for your friends who are more liberal in nature or don't understand Bitcoin, because there's a couple of chapters in Bitcoin here as well. And we need to start reaching people. And I think now is the time, because people are getting really concerned, just as much as we have been for many, many years. So let's seize that opportunity, not by being cruel to people, but by being enlightened and empathetic and reaching them. It'll make all the difference, I promise you. Okay, I got to run, and